Hey everybody, hope everybody's doing good. We're gonna dive into some really interesting ideas and functions and divine mathematics here today. And I'm gonna start with a few technical terms and explanations that will help provide the foundation or framework for divine mathematics. It'll also give anyone the right perspective of how to approach something like this. And these are really high level technical ideas. So I'll go slow, but they really are quite amazing. And once understood, you will really have the right perspective to do things like understand how time travel works, understand how superluminal flight works, how warp drive and warp speed and the type of mathematics and equations that go along with those kind of things work. And this is quite a crucial thing. So I'm going to begin here. I'm going to put up each section so you can read it, and I'm going to just kind of go through it to break it down, and then we can go into it even more. Essentially, this is going to lead to explaining how free energy works and how it can be done and created. Okay, a standing wave is a pattern of energetic vibration within a given medium. The oscillating frequency of its generating source causes that its waves previously emitted and that have been reflected back to itself interfere with those that come directly from it. This interference occurs in such a way that specific points are generated in the medium that appear as static, giving rise to the name standing wave. There is only one substance, and it exists as a wave and spreads throughout the universe. Space is an uninterrupted and interwoven medium of this wave that is defined as potential energy. Matter is formed in spherical toroidal waves in interwoven space following predictable and specific mathematical patterns known as sacred geometry. The spherico-toroidal forms are the points of energetic concentration of the standing waves, also known as nodes. The matter is made up of a concentration of standing spherical toroidal waves that form these points or nodes. Therefore, the whole matter is interconnected. These waves vibrate and interact with each other within the entire interconnected medium of potential energy. The predictable mathematical patterns known as sacred geometry are those that determine the concentration and position of the nodes or standing waves that in turn will form matter. These mathematical patterns in the form of sacred geometry are imposed directly by the attention of a consciousness and are applied to the medium in which the waves propagate. Space as an energetic concentration coming from another medium in a superior plane consciousness. This is the emitter of the wave that spreads through the medium or potential energy throughout the universe, and this in turn forms it. This medium or potential energy is the ether. The patterns of sacred geometry that form the standing waves and that in turn give rise to matter come from a higher plane that is also formed by another plane superior to this one, and so on until forming the whole or the source. The sacred geometry of each plane is progressive and exponentially more complex by including all the necessary information to form all the lower planes. The waves that create a conscious being vibrate within this interconnected and interwoven matrix of potential energy called ether. Your mind, your senses, your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions are those waves and determine the frequency of the emission. These waves, changes, and variations in the frequency of the emission are in constant communication with all other waves. The movement and frequency of its undulations within the medium are caused by the point of attention of the conscious being and will form the portion of the space that he will see as his outer world. Whatever has the attention and creative focus of a consciousness will take shape. If several energy-emitting points, that is, several conscious beings, have the same point or focus of their attention, either already existing or something in formation in the idea stage, the emission of waves will create a constructive interference, reinforcing the points or nodes of the standing waves within the energetic soup called ether, accelerating the formation of new matter by the cooperative accumulation of energy with a specific pattern in common. Likewise, if several energy-emitting points have the same point or focus of their attention, but different opposing intentions or feelings, a destructive interference between them will be created. This applies both to the creation of matter and to situations or events that are nothing more than an animated sequence of positions of matter manifested by the attention of one or more consciousnesses. The animation of events or time is only a frequency emitted from a consciousness within the etheric field. The points of attention, or the point of focus of the being with consciousness, is the result of the communication between all the waves within the medium or ether. These can come from the same consciousness in the form of reflection or rebound, or they can also come from another being or beings with consciousness inside or outside the same existential plane. They will form complex patterns of energy concentrations or patterns of stationary wave nodes, either in the form of constructive interference or destructive interference. These energy patterns are what the beings with consciousness within the shared medium will perceive as the external world. The interaction between the waves within the medium modifies its frequency and also creates new waves. Therefore, the focus or point of attention of a consciousness individual or collective, is the center of attraction where a concentration of energy or node is created of a standing wave. This energy concentration or stationary wave node within the medium called ether is the same as a subatomic particle that, following the patterns established by the attention points of the emitting consciousness, will form progressively more complex energetic structures. First subatomic particles, then atoms that formed complex molecules that in turn formed elements, substances, and structures of matter, including DNA, all following the mathematical patterns of sacred geometry in the form of harmonics of a frequency imposed by the dynamics of interaction between the waves and their frequency within the medium or ether, emitted by the points of attention or focus of a consciousness. All matter as such, as well as its sequence animated by a conscience, has as its basis or primitive energy structure the sacred geometry, and this is because it is the only way in which matter could be formed as a harmonic of a mathematically perfect frequency is needed to sustain the nodes or energetic points of the standing waves within the medium of potential energy called ether. Any frequency outside the harmonic of sacred geometry would collapse said standing wave, dissolving the node, and with this the matter. Everything a being with consciousness lives, experiences, feels, thinks, says, and does is experienced by all the interwoven and interconnected medium of potential energy called ether, which forms the universe. Your thoughts create a change of frequency, movement, and volume within the waves that you emit. Your feelings create a change within the harmonic of the frequency that you emit, changing with this your mathematical energetic structure. The frequency of the outgoing wave, which emits the conscious being, is a form of communication with the field or medium in which it is. What it emits in the outgoing wave determines what communication it will receive in the incoming wave. Each individual with conscious determines and controls the nature of the communication that he transmits and receives with his own dynamics of personal flow of information, moving at will his point of attention, frequency of thought, ideas, and feelings. All the information in the interconnected and interwoven medium is shared and affects all its parts. In all the medium, using frequencies of energetic waves that interfere with each other, always observing mathematical structures of sacred geometry. This is the definition of the whole. It is the unified field, the source or the cooperative conjunction of all the consciences as a whole. It is the universe itself. It is the definition of every little creature with consciousness. A being with consciousness is a node or energetic point of a standing wave, and in turn is a holographic fragment of the whole, and the whole simultaneously. Every being with a consciousness is the universe itself. The mathematics or vortices contains all the formulas that control both the mechanics of the manifestation and its specific frequencies or harmonics of a frequency that controls everything. The math and energy flow that forms a toroidal flow structure is the basis for the formation of matter and is also the key to zero-point energy. And it is also related to the Fibonacci sequence. It is not necessary to go into detail here because all this is easy to find online. So this is going to be the end of this part. There's a lot to kind of swallow here, and I want to do a just basic recap of everything that was just read, so that everyone's on the same page and understands this first part. Because the next part that we're going to get into is going to be a breakdown of how free energy and the 0 point is created and how it works. Okay, so basically in this long kind of winded explanation of the unified source field and ether, I'm going to try to just do a quick step down recap of what we just heard in case it was a bit too technical. So essentially, the ether, let's look at it like this. Ether is like, it takes on the appearance of an energetic medium that everything moves within and as. So, it's typically in the fourth dimension, so that's the reason why we don't see it and feel it maybe as much, but some people who are activated or have turned on their other senses can absolutely feel it. To give you an example of what that feels like, it's kind of like if you're underwater and someone's swimming next to you and they shake their hands. Well, that's kind of how it is in regular life for people that can sense those energies. Every thought wave, every ripple and vibration that anything makes will vibrate through the ether as if it was like a massive ocean, and you're in that ocean as well, so you're going to feel those ripples and vibrations depending on what that person, place, or thing or consciousness actually is doing. The more refined a person's higher senses, the more refined you'll be able to sense extremely sensitive, rarefied frequencies. So here's another idea. So from a mathematical perspective, a standing wave, and I could probably pull up a picture here to show you, is essentially how the vibrations of said consciousness, person, place, or thing flows in its given existential plane of existence. And there's a lot of math and mathematical things you can do here, so I recommend people to check out the double slit experiment, because they show kind of good graphs, like if there's a vibration, or if there are photons and they're being kind of shot forward, well, they're going to hit this wall, then bounce back, and you're going to kind of get this other wave coming into your wave going forward, and it's going to create this, what they call an interference pattern. I believe that's what it's called. Or an interference pattern. And it's just going to look like these kind of ripples and lines of just standing waves and graph parts or something like that. I'll show you a picture. But at any given moment, you're going to have the wave of your vibration emitting forward in this primordial soup, and the other waves of consciousness, of vibration, as well as anything that's already reflecting back your energy. And all of this is creating this visual hologram that we live in. And that's the biggest point I want to make here. Quantum physics has proven this is a hologram that we experience. This matter is not really matter. It's really photons of light moving very fast in a certain way, in a certain rate, with a combination of other things that creates the illusion or hologram of what we experience in our physical world. And there is a very specific function that takes place when you have photons of light or standing waves, that are creating what we see and are experiencing, and how those photons then break down or collapse into matter, or how they then transition into the matter that we think we are experiencing or that we've agreed to experience in this matrix. And I'll explain that here right now. So there's basically two types of vibrations that I'm going to talk about right now. The first one I'm going to call the primordial substance vibration. That is the vibration of all the subatomic particles within a person, place, thing, or consciousness. It's the combination of all the vibrating, oscillating vibrations of the subatomic particles within a given thing, person, place, or consciousness. That's what a person's encryption is. It's the vibration of the combination of all subatomic particles within and that which make up a person. It is such a sensitive vibration. I don't think we have any tools that actually can measure, oscillations and vibrations of subatomic particles. But people can sense it, believe it or not. Even if you're not maybe consider yourself spiritual, you don't feel like you're very activated, you know what someone feels like. People have a certain vibe to them, for those who are kind of aware of energies. And that vibe literally is that. It is that encryption. And that encryption we're going to call the primordial substance vibration. Now, everything in the unified fields of source of the entire eternal existence has a unique primordial substance vibration and encryption that no one can really copy. People can probably get very close, but when kind of like measured out to very specific decimals, you probably can't 100% just copy the vibrations of another person or another being or thing. So that's what allows things to have their, individuality, their uniqueness. Everyone's going to vibrate a little differently. And even though you're not consciously trying to control the vibrations of the combination of all the subatomic particles oscillating and vibrating that make up who you are, as those kind of form into atoms and stuff, that'll be your vibe. And people can sense those things. People can get the consciousness of a human can get very refined and very specific when it comes to sensing things. So that's the first thing. Everything in the unified source field can be measured as a frequency or vibration, and it can be measured in hertz. But again, we're not measuring the vibrations and oscillations of matter. We're measuring the combination of all subatomic particles oscillating and vibrating for a given person, place, thing, consciousness, idea, or whatever. That will be our foundational framework for how we're going to look at the unified source field. So when I say, this thing's vibrating at this frequency and that frequency, we're talking about the primordial substance vibration. And so, with that being said, So with that being said, let's take this entire existence and let's just put it on a two-dimensional piece of paper. We're going to throw time in there. We're going to throw everything in there. And we're going to make this really, really easy. At certain levels, and the way we're talking about this, every single little thing can be mapped out almost like in a graph or a grid. I would call it a matrix, a universal matrix, with the factors of their frequency or their vibration, hertz. Again, the primordial substance vibration, as well as a few other factors. And we can pretty much solve all problems, answer all questions, and understand all things if we look at it from this format. Secondly, ether is it is everything. It is that which we are. It is everything that we are made out of. When we individuate, we basically, we come from the ether. The ether will produce, our body forms, our consciousness, our soul. And at the same time, we are made up of the ether and we move through the ether. So it seems complicated, but it's not. I just try to make it simple. Imagine everything is just a big gooey soup of potentialized energy. So not manifested energy, but potentialized energy. And that's the second thing I want to mention. In this matrix and graph that we're building, this unified source field, everything is sitting as potentialized energy. It hasn't moved into actual manifested energy. And I forgot what the right word for that is. But so it's sitting as potentialized energy. A lot of this is straight a part of quantum mechanics. But if you don't know that, it's not too hard to figure out. So just imagine everything is in this kind of wave. And there's still dimensions and densities and, different higher planes where the ether is still the everything, and source is source, God, or just the source of all, only one source, and is everything. The source is the one who probably created the ether and everything else, and absolutely did. But in this universal matrix, that's how these things work. So from a kind of a mathematical perspective, on a piece of paper, you can just imagine everything exists as a standing wave. If I were to look at this on a graph, that wave, which can be reflected as, a sine wave or kind of like a, up, down type of wave, at the trough, and we call them nodes, and the apex of the wave, these are parts of the standing wave where consciousness and matter exists. They exist at the nodes. So, in terms of trying to understand it mathematically, consciousness and matter are points on the standing wave where the nodes are. And the nodes are typically where the bottom of the wave hits or kind of where the top of the wave hits. I don't know why that's important, but I just wanted to explain that. And then, so when you have something moving from, let's say, it'll always be moving from a consciousness that has manifested whatever we're about to see or experience. So that consciousness creates, with vibration and their mind and their soul, their realities. And those realities will then populate, kind of like, you know, a hologram would, even though we don't see that. This is all happening at speeds we don't even know about. And it will then interact with other consciousnesses in this shared unified field that we made agreements to exist in and experience before we incarnated. So there is kind of like a playing field construct or set of rules for how things are going to manifest and how energies are going to interact with each other. It's like an agreed upon contract. It's an agreed upon set of rules for this matrix to work the way it does. And then we choose to incarnate into it and experience, whether it be third dimensional reality or you know, separation from source, whatever it is you wanted to experience down here in the Earth School. So you've got this kind of, and source also is regulating and managing all this from the top. So you've got this kind of playing field of environments, planets, universes, whatever, air you breathe, your body's like this kind of somewhat absolute type of conditions in this reality. And the second your consciousness intends with intention something, it is then giving attention to whatever it is you are giving attention to with your mind or your intentions. And what that does is this is kind of how gravity comes into effect. You then use, and the gravity comes from consciousness. Gravity comes from conscious beings. When they want to create something, gravity is utilized in the creation of our manifestations. It is the power and strength of the person who's manifesting this thing right now that we're talking about, and the amount of quantum that this individual has as an energetic being, as a form of consciousness or divine consciousness, because that's what we are consciousness. That will depict how much gravity and how much ability that this person will have in regards to manifesting anything. Because if I want to manifest, let's say, a chocolate chip cookie, well, I can send that thought image out, but as that image is sent out, something has to attract the conditions, the light, the energetic flows and energy for this to actually come into manifestation as matter from the ether, or from the conscious being that's manifesting. So this is just my theory, but that gravity is directly connected to how strong a being is. The stronger you are, the more quantum you have, the more you've healed your energetic bodies, the more that you have integrated your God self, your eternal self, the more control of your consciousness you will have, the more powerful you will be, and the more you'll be able to manifest things. And hopefully instantly at some point once you get to the fifth dimension. It is this intentive and intentional force to create through intention that lies a direct correlation to gravity. You know, it's gravity that is coming from the force of a conscious being manifesting, whether consciously or subconsciously, or intending things that they just want to have. And that's how gravity comes into play. We're on the earth. The earth wanted to be here. There's also that preset conditions of laws and kind of rules about how things are going to work. So that's kind of there also in the construct. But it's all about what a conscious being is manifesting. And that's how gravity works. Now, obviously, the earth is a lot larger, but, you know, it's a combination of many things.